president does choose to implement any tariffs against Canada, we're ready with a response. A purposeful, forceful, but reasonable, immediate response.
For decades, the US auto industry has reigned supreme, dominating North America with horsepower brands like Ford, General Motors, and Tesla. But in a shocking turn of events, Canada has just pulled off a move that could send shockwaves through Detroit and beyond. In one swift move, Canada has just destroyed the entire US auto industry. How?
The impact of tariffs would be inflation. The cost of vehicles would jump, but it would also cost jobs in both countries. Canadian parts suppliers own more than 150 plants in 19 US states, employing 50,000 Americans.
A bold strategy, groundbreaking technology, and a surprising shift in manufacturing dominance have left American automakers scrambling to keep up. Could this be the beginning of the end for the US auto industry as we know it? Or is there still a chance for redemption? Buckle up, this is a game changer.
Exported from Canada and Mexico to the US will be hit with a 25%.
Canada has responded swiftly, decisively, and with careful strategy to the aggressive tariff policies introduced by newly elected US President Donald Trump. The tariffs imposed on Canadian exports were perceived as a direct threat to Canada's economic stability, particularly its vital manufacturing sector. In response, Canada took action with countermeasures aimed squarely at the US auto industry, one of the pillars of American manufacturing and employment.
Tariffs are implemented against Canada, we will respond. We won't relent until tariffs are removed and, of course, everything is on the table.
The North America auto industry operates with a deeply interconnected supply chain, with parts crossing borders multiple times before a finished vehicle reaches consumers. Canada plays a key role in this system, manufacturing crucial components such as advanced automotive electronics and precision-engineered steel parts. The industry relies on a just-in-time production model, meaning even minor disruptions can have severe ripple effects. By targeting essential exports, Canada's countermeasures were designed to bring US assembly lines to a standstill, causing production delays, layoffs, and significant financial losses.
They've taken about 20% of our car business. I'd rather have it done in Detroit or have it done in South Carolina or any other state that does cars, and we have a lot of them. We don't need Canada for that. We don't need Canada for lumber.
Canada's response was based on clear economic reasoning. The US heavily depends on Canadian automotive parts, and any disruption in supply would cripple production for major manufacturers like Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. These countermeasures were not symbolic, but carefully crafted to apply maximum pressure in the shortest possible time. The restrictions specifically targeted high-value components crucial to vehicle production, including specialized aluminum, steel, wiring harnesses, and transmission systems. Without these parts, even the largest US automakers would struggle to maintain production schedules, triggering an immediate employment crisis in an industry that directly supports nearly 1 million American jobs and millions more in related sectors.
Tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk, potentially shutting down American auto assembly plants and other manufacturing facilities. They will raise costs.
American auto executives were caught off guard by the sheer force of Canada's response. While Trump's tariffs were meant to protect US industries, they failed to account for the deeply integrated nature of North American manufacturing. The US administration had assumed Canada would yield under pressure, but instead, Canada demonstrated its readiness to defend its economic interests with surgical precision. The consequences were immediate. US automakers faced production bottlenecks, factory slowdowns, and the looming risk of mass layoffs,
including food at the grocery stores and gas at the pump.
Beyond the factories of Detroit and Ohio, the financial sector also felt the impact. Wall Street reacted as stock prices of major American automakers plunged, with investors wary of supply chain disruptions that could harm profitability and erode consumer confidence. Dealerships braced for vehicle shortages, leading to rising prices and potential market share losses as consumers turned to foreign automakers unaffected by the trade dispute. What began as a manufacturing crisis quickly extended to the pockets of everyday Americans who relied on affordable, readily available vehicles. Politically, Canada's bold move sent a clear message to the Trump administration.
4. If President Trump wants to usher in a new golden age for the United States, the better path is to partner with Canada.
Economic aggression would be met with equally strong resistance. Canada's retaliatory tariffs showcased its willingness to assert its economic strength in ways Washington had not foreseen. The Trump administration, which had built its trade policies on the idea of negotiating from a position of dominance, suddenly found itself on the defensive. Many Americans who had initially supported the tariffs, believing they would boost domestic manufacturing, were now experiencing the real-world consequences of their government's economic brinkmanship. Workers in states that had overwhelmingly backed Trump were among the first to feel the impact, as factory closures and furloughs became an imminent reality.
What would a 10% universal tariff mean? It just means nobody's going to make any money, including the Americans. 25 isn't even a discussion. There's no point in being in business.
So it would be catastrophic. It would be devastating.
The effects of Canada's countermeasures extended beyond the auto industry. The response signaled to other US trade partners that retaliation against protectionist policies was not only possible, but also effective. As the trade standoff escalated, other nations closely monitored the situation, weighing their own responses to Trump's broader trade agenda. Canada's actions set a precedent for future disputes, proving that even highly integrated economies could use supply chains as leverage if provoked. For policymakers in Washington, the unexpected pushback from a close ally forced a re-evaluation of how trade negotiations were conducted in an increasingly interconnected world.
America.
Oppose tariffs. Tariffs are always a bad idea.
Beyond the immediate economic and political turmoil, Canada's move had a significant psychological impact. It shattered the assumption that the US could impose trade policies unilaterally without consequences. The retaliatory measures underscored the reality that economic independence meant no country, regardless of its power, was immune to the fallout of protectionist policies. Canada's response was not just about protecting its own economy, but also about reinforcing the principle that free and fair trade requires mutual respect. The decisions to target the US auto industry was a strategic one, designed to apply maximum pressure and force Washington to rethink its approach.
Close to 10% of vehicles on the road in the US were made in Canada.
Within Canada, the move received widespread support. Businesses, unions, and government officials rallied behind the countermeasure, seeing them as essential to protecting domestic jobs and economic stability. The Canadian manufacturing sector had long been wary of US protectionist policies, and Trump's tariffs were viewed as a direct threat to Canadian livelihoods. The swift and precise response reassured industries that their own government was committed to defending them against economic aggression. While some feared that escalating tensions could lead to further economic hardship, many recognized that failing to act would be even worse, as it would allow the US to dictate trade terms without opposition. As the trade conflict unfolded, American automakers and workers faced growing uncertainty. Assembly lines that had once operated seamlessly were now vulnerable to shifting trade policies. The auto industry's once efficient logistics network had become a liability as layoffs and production shutdowns loomed. Executives scrambled to find alternative suppliers, a near impossible task given the highly specialized nature of Canadian-made components. The reality will soon set in.